Hey everybody, my name is Mike Gaudette. Welcome to the channel and thank you for joining me for another song bracket. Today's band that we're going to be covering is Pink Floyd, which is one of my all-time favorite rock bands, so I'm very excited to be going through some songs with you. And how it's going to work is we're going to go through 32 different songs, so 16 songs on each side, and I'm going chronologically from the Piper at the Gates of Dawn up to The Wall. I'm leaving off at The Wall. It kind of felt weird including some of those later albums where it's, a David Gilmour album or a Roger Waters centered album. So I'm just going to go from Piper at the Gates of Dawn up to The Wall, and it will be just a general process of elimination tournament until we get down to the final two, and then we will have the grand reveal of what my number one favorite Pink Floyd song is. And please let me know what you think in the comments, where you agree and disagree, and I would love to hear what your number one favorite Pink Floyd song is. So please let me know in the comments. All right, let's jump right into it. Okay, we're going to start out with a pairing from the Piper at the Gates of Dawn, Astronomy Domine, which is actually how it's pronounced. For the longest time, I had no idea how to say that, and then I found a video of, I believe, Roger Waters pronouncing it at a live show. So Astronomy Domine versus Interstellar Overdrive. For me, that one is easily Astronomy Domine. In my opinion, that is the best song that Syd Barrett had written for Pink Floyd, and one of the strongest opening tracks of any Pink Floyd album as well. I absolutely love that song. All right, next we're going to have a pairing from the Piper at the Gates of Dawn versus A Saucerful of Secrets. So we have Bike versus Let There Be More Light. Both are very cool songs and psychedelic songs, but, different types of moods. But I think I would have to go with Bike. That's a really cool, very kind of upbeat, almost childlike psychedelic rock song from Syd Barrett. All right, now we are going to do a pairing from A Saucerful of Secrets and the soundtrack to More with Set the Controls for the Heart of the Sun versus Green is the Color. That one is easily going to be Set the Controls for the Heart of the Sun, one of the great, really psychedelic, trippy, early Pink Floyd songs that has a real darkness to it that I love. Definitely my favorite song from A Saucerful of Secrets. All right, now we're up to Atom Heart Mother, and the pairing is going to be If versus Summer 68. Definitely going to go with If. That song is so beautiful. All right, now we are into Metal, one of the great early Pink Floyd records, and we're going to do A Pillow of Winds versus Saint-Tropez. I love both of these tracks, but they're such different vibes. I think I'll go with A Pillow of Winds. That has some really great guitar work from David Gilmour and just an overall very, peaceful and serene sort of mood. All right, now we're going to do Echoes versus the title track to the Obscured by Clouds record, Obscured by Clouds. That one, I don't even have to think about it. Obviously, it's going to be Echoes, one of the legendary, really long Pink Floyd tracks from the early part of their discography. Absolutely incredible song. All right, now we're going to do one more track from Obscured by Clouds with What's the Deal versus Breathe in the Air, so getting into Dark Side of the Moon. Obviously, I'm going to have to go with Breathe. All right, and then our final pairing from side one, we have Time versus Money. Now, in my early days, I would say that this would be a tough choice, but Money is a song that I will admit I've listened to so many times now that I'm kind of sick of it, but Time is one of those tracks that I can listen to over and over and over again and never get tired of it, so I'm going to go with that one. Also, one of the great David Gilmour guitar solos. All right, so that concludes round one of side one. Now we have round one of side two. Continuing off of Dark Side of the Moon, we have Us and Them versus The Great Gig in the Sky. Love both of these tracks, but Us and Them is, in my opinion, one of the best tracks off of Dark Side of the Moon, so I'm going to go with that. Okay, now we're going to do a pairing of Dark Side of the Moon and Wish You Were Here with Brain Damage versus Shine On, You Crazy Diamond, parts 1 through 5. Again, both incredible songs, and once we get to this part of the Pink Floyd discography, there's really no bad songs, in my opinion. They were just completely on fire at this point with all of the records that they were putting out. But I'm going to have to go with Shine On, You Crazy Diamond. That is just one of the legendary opening tracks of any Pink Floyd record, has some incredible guitar solos from David Gilmour, and just a song that really takes its time and, goes on for a long period of time, but it's just so engaging with so many great instrumental passages going on and just an incredible song. So I'm going to go with that. All right, now we are on to a pairing from Wish You Were Here with Welcome to the Machine and Wish You Were Here. I will say a lot of the things that I said about Money, how I've just heard it so many times that I'm kind of tired of it. I do sort of feel the same way about Wish You Were Here. Although it is a beautiful track, I don't find myself really ever going back to it. Whereas Welcome to the Machine is just such an unbelievably incredible and haunting track. So I'm going to have to go with that one. I love that song so much. All right, now we are going to do a pairing of Wish You Were Here and Animals with Have a Cigar versus Dogs. As much as I love Have a Cigar, I think Dogs is hands down the best song from the Animals album. So much depth to that track. And again, some incredible guitar solos from David Gilmour. So I'm going to go with Dogs. All right, now we are going to pair Animals and then get into The Wall. So Pigs, 3 different ones versus Another Brick in the Wall Part 2. Again, I've heard Another Brick in the Wall so many times that I don't find myself going back to it very often, although I do like it more than Wish You Were Here and Money. So I'm going to go with Pigs. That is a really incredible track. The Animals album, in general is just absolutely spectacular, and in my opinion, one of the more underappreciated Pink Floyd records. All right, now we're going to conclude with a couple of pairings from The Wall, starting with Mother and Young Lust. This one, definitely going to go with Mother. That's a beautiful acoustic track. Again, with an absolutely beautiful and very lyrical guitar solo from David Gilmour. Definitely one of my favorite David Gilmour solos. All right, Goodbye Blue Sky versus Hey You. These are interesting songs to pair together because they both have some really haunting qualities to it. Hey You, the entire song is just very dark and very ominous. And Goodbye Blue Sky starts out on a more peaceful and serene note and then takes some dark turns. And I love both of these tracks, but Hey You has always had a special place in my heart. That's another one of those songs where I've heard it so many times, but I just never get tired of it, like I had said with Time from Dark Side of the Moon. So I'm going to go with Hey You. And then our last pairing for side 2 will be Comfortably Numb versus Run Like Hell. Gotta go with Comfortably Numb. That is just such a classic. Another one that I do not get tired of. All right, so that concludes round 1 from side 1 and side 2. Now we're going to go into round 2 of side 1 with Astronomy Domine versus Bike. All right, that one is a no-brainer for me. Easily Astronomy Domine, which is my favorite song from Piper at the Gates of Dawn. All right, then we have Set the Controls for the Heart of the Sun versus If. That one also got to go with Set the Controls for the Heart of the Sun. Just such a dark and haunting track with great bass line and just really atmospheric, lots of just cool psychedelic things going on within that track. All right, A Pillow of Winds versus Echoes. Both are incredible songs from the Metal album, but I would probably have to go with Echoes. I don't know how I could not choose that one. And then our last pairing from round 2 of side 1, we have Breathe versus Time. That is a tougher one because these are both absolutely spectacular songs, but I have to go with Time. Again, just can never get tired of that song. All right, that concludes round 2 of side 1. Now we have round 2 of side 2, starting with Us and Them versus Shine On, You Crazy Diamond. All right, now that is a tough one. I'm going to have to think about that one for a second. I love both of these songs so much. I am stumped. Wow. I think I'll do Us and Them. Just thinking it over more, I think I might like Us and Them the slightest bit more, but that was a tough choice. All right, now Welcome to the Machine versus Dogs. Easily going to go with Dogs. I love that song so much. And then Pigs, 3 different ones versus Mother. That's a tough one. Those are very different vibes. I have to go with Mother. Mother's just so beautiful. All right, and then Hey You versus Comfortably Numb. Definitely going to go with Hey You. That's my favorite track from The Wall. And that concludes round 2 of side 2. Now we have round 3 of side 1. Astronomy Domine versus Set the Controls for the Heart of the Sun. Got to go with Astronomy Domine. Again, that one has just been dominating the side 1. I love that track so much. And then Echoes versus Time. Wow, these are both incredible songs, but I do find myself going back to Time more than Echoes, so I will go with that one. All right, and then round 3 of side 2, we have Us and Them versus Dogs. Got to go with Dogs as much as I love Us and Them. I just think Dogs is one of the greatest Pink Floyd songs of all time. And then Mother versus Hey You. Gonna go with Hey You. I tend to resonate more with the darker side of the Pink Floyd sound, as you can see with a lot of these songs that are coming down into the final four. All right, so now to narrow it down to the final two, if we go over to side one, Astronomy Domine versus Time. Obviously, I'm going to pick Time. That would be pretty wild if Astronomy Domine made it to the final two. I think a lot of people would have seen that as a pretty big curveball, but got to go with Time. All right, and then for the final round of side three, Dogs versus Hey You. Now, these are both spectacular songs and are both kind of similar in the sense that they're very dark, very ominous, a lot of really dreary sorts of, vibes going on within these tracks. As much as I love Hey You, I love Dogs even more, so I'm going to pick Dogs for that one. All right, now we're down to the final two, so it's going to be Time versus Dogs. This is a pretty good final two, in my opinion. These are both spectacular songs. And I don't know if anybody here has watched my Pink Floyd album ranking video where I went through and ranked all of their studio albums, but I said in that video, I gave it away that Dogs is my number one favorite Pink Floyd song, so I'm going to go with that. From the moment I heard that song, I was just immediately intrigued, and I just listened to it over and over and over again. I love everything about it. The unique chord progression, the really dark lyrics, the vocals from Roger Waters, the incredible guitar solos from David Gilmour, and all of the different feel and groove changes that happen throughout it, which just make the song so engaging for how long it is. Pink Floyd is one of those bands that I always say have this amazing ability to write these songs that are, 10, 15, 20 minutes long, and they just keep your complete undivided attention all the way throughout. And there are very few bands that can really pull that off as well as Pink Floyd, and I think a song like Dogs is the perfect example of that. So Dogs is coming in as my number one favorite Pink Floyd song. And that is it for our song bracket for today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope it was enjoyable. And if you're interested, check out my other song brackets as well as my album tier lists and my top 5 album series where I walk you through my 5 favorite albums from every year. And please be sure to let me know what your favorite Pink Floyd song is in the comments. I would love to hear what you think. All right, that is it for today. Thanks again for watching, and stay tuned for the next song bracket. I'll see you then. Take care.